until a year later. And at that point, the hysteria was in full force. And so there were a number of FBI whistleblowers, several of whom we have represented, people like Steve Friend, Marcus Allen, Garrett O'Boyle, who were objecting in various ways to how the FBI was approaching its investigations of those related to January 6th. But this particular individual had his security clearance suspended, and that's when all of this hit. And so 1 year ago, I testified alongside three of those other whistleblowers, Steve Friend, Marcus Allen, Garrett O'Boyle, in front of the Weaponization Committee. And at the time, the FBI had just released information that they had all had their security clearances suspended. A couple of them revoked. And so as we started that hearing, Delegate Stacy Plaskett opened by saying, you know, Chairman Jordan, you've invited these people here who are a threat to our national security. How dare you? And now, a year later, we've been able to pull back the curtain and see the FBI's documentation for why it did what it did with their clearances. And that's the context in which we've seen this sort of questioning going on, asking people if they ever supported President Trump. And mind you, it wasn't just that they asked these individuals, these were interviews by the Security Clearance Division of their fellow employees. So people who were compelled to answer, who had to either answer these questions from the Security Division or have their own security clearance called into question. And they were asked, did you ever socialize with these individuals? What was your association with them? And then asked these extremely intrusive questions. And so that's the context in which this very problematic set of questions came up. And what we are hearing is that this may be just the tip of the iceberg. There were many, you know, that certainly there have been allegations out there that once people got swept into that security funnel, that there was a purge of FBI employees that had conservative views or had skepticism of the vaccine or just hesitancy to receive it. And now in black and white, we've uncovered those documents because of our client's security appeal, where we've been able to see the basis on which his colleagues were questioned. And this is extremely problematic.
It was pretty clear from the beginning, and there are different threads here, but on the vax specifically, that the vaccine mandates were designed, and certainly their effect was, to winnow out people with high testosterone levels, independent thinking, commitment to liberty, common sense, out of positions in the federal government. And that would definitely include the military, but also at the agencies, including the FBI. So they found out this guy didn't take the vax, and that was one of the factors.
Yeah, it clearly was one of the factors. And it's ironic because this came 3 months after a court had put an injunction on the federal employee vaccine mandate. And so this was not even a live issue. This was not a matter of you're currently required to and you're not. Months after that, they're asking his colleagues, did he ever express any hesitancy about the COVID-19 vaccine?
Hesitancy. Did he pause before allowing an injection?
Yes, and of course the reverse of this, right? I think every American would agree it would not be appropriate in the future for the FBI to ask employees, did they ever express any support for receiving an abortion? You know, this idea that that's any of the FBI's business whatsoever is really, really outrageous.
Support for Donald Trump, support for the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, our founding document. So these are disqualifying positions.
Well, that's clearly seems to be the case behind the scenes. Now, again, keep in mind, this is not what was put into the security clearance suspension letter that our client received, or that other whistleblowers we have represented responded. It's not what went into their revocation letters. So it's only now, like I said, pulling back the curtain that we see that it's behind closed doors, right? So it's within this black box of secrecy. And it's really this secret process that has no oversight from the outside. Generally no oversight from the Inspector General, no oversight from Congress. That's an environment that allowed this to flourish, because otherwise we never would have known about this had we not seen those backing documents, because again, the proposals themselves didn't reference any of these things that we would consider legitimate. They just talked about whether someone engaged in violence, whether they broke laws on January 6th, and the things that stretched beyond that into personal and political views, or even feelings about one's own bodily autonomy. All of that was hidden in these documents. And now we've lifted the mask off the FBI, and we are certainly going to push the Inspector General to see whether this happened in other pieces. And we strongly expect that they will find that it did.
So for those who don't work in or around government, it may be hard to appreciate how central security clearance is if you're working in an agency like the FBI. You can't do your job without clearance. But the criteria for getting only a clearance are sometimes muddy. In other words, there's a lot of subjective judgment, and it's particularly vulnerable to political interference, right? Because there isn't, character, for example, is one of the criteria. Person to be character. So, like, how much do we know, not just about this case, but about all security clearances across the millions of federal employees, about how these clearances are awarded?
Well, there are criteria that are supposed to be consistent across the board. So there are executive orders. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence puts out guidance on these. It is subjective agency by agency. Several years ago, Working Capitol Hills investigated a very in-depth investigation of the Secret Service and how they issue clearances, and it was clear that there does change from agency to agency. And what's ironic about this is that, again, as a credential, if you will, if someone gets pushed out of the FBI, because they say didn't show up for work on time or something else, right? That looks bad. Fine. If you have your security clearance revoked, you're not in a position to go to another agency, right? You can't say I want to go to Immigration and Customs Enforcement because I think that they need some help over there. No, you have been disloyal to the United States, and so lacking a security clearance, that's a huge issue. And this came up as we recently obtained total vindication for one of those individuals I mentioned, Marcus Allen, who was an FBI employee, and just last week we were able to get his clearance reinstated. We were able to get a full back pay for 27 months that he was without work.
Wow.
During that whole entire time, it's not just this future idea of credential. During that whole entire time, he was not paid while he was held in limbo. And so again, it seems designed to squeeze him to leaving the FBI, which is what this anonymous client in the current case that we're talking about did. And so, again, if you leave while your clearance is suspended or while it is revoked, you don't have a future hope of getting a job with a law enforcement agency or anywhere that will require clearance or access to secure classified information.
What's so baffling is that Republicans hold the majority in the House. There's a Republican speaker. We now know through proven with documents that supporting a Republican president is enough to get your security clearance. So the FBI is by definition a political security organization, and that's antithetical to freedom. And yet the Republicans in the Congress, even though this is all very obvious, just refunded the FBI and allocated hundreds of millions of dollars to build a new headquarters. They're rewarding them. So at what point do Republicans
Donald Trump was behind that. Figure that out.
Dedicated to destroying us?
I think these documents are going to be continued. Frankly, I think that the Inspector General, we expect that an investigation by the Inspector General will open up. We expect that Congress is going to do an oversight of that. And along with some of these other instances of vindication, I think this summer we're going to see exposed quite a bit how the FBI has shown such political bias in what they do. So I think Congress has a unique opportunity here, to overhaul the FBI personnel that are in it at the moment, to reform that, and also to pursue broader reforms from a legal front. So to your point about funding, this is the time. This is the thing that more than anything else, these documents demonstrate in black and white what individuals like Chairman Jim Jordan have been alleging for 2 years. And now we have the definitive proof of that. So we expect there's going to be a lot of attention given to these, and not just from Congress, but from places like the Inspector General Michael Horowitz, and the press and others, because now you cannot deny that these political considerations
Horowitz, where do you know that name
tossed
from?
around in a general sense. They weren't just possible considerations. They were there in black and white for individuals in their security clearance situations.
I mean, it just becomes clear to me that January 6th was a hoax on one level, but the response to it was one of the most corrupt things that's ever happened in my lifetime. That's the conclusion I'm coming to.
It's difficult. Clearly, that's a touch point for a lot of people. And I will tell you, as a former congressional staffer, it was difficult for me to see where there was violence on campuses, right? And so those that were applause, right? I don't have the objection to those people, suffering consequences. I agree. Right? And I think for most Americans, that's the case. But again, within the FBI, for people that have just been on the grounds, the FBI to have gone after those individuals for that to become, and again, that was the tipping point within the FBI for this sort of hysteria when anybody that came to the attention of the security division. All of these other factors then got wrapped in, right? It wasn't a question of, were you present violence to our country. One of the things that we brought to the attention of the Inspector General a year ago was that less than a month after January 6th, the new Deputy Director of the FBI, a guy named Paul spoke up in a call with all special agents in charge around the country from the FBI and said, if you don't like our response to January 6th, now we're going after this, the FBI is not the place for you. You can come talk to me, but we don't need agents like that.
Wow.
And it's just not healthy or fair for the FBI to push out, say, roughly half of its employees just because they have different political views. Weren't there on January 6th, didn't engage in violence, none of those things. What's the FBI to use that as a pretext to say, well, we don't need you, we don't want you.
Well, I the part of it is tyranny, right? I mean, this is an agency that's allowed to kill you if they deem it justified. They can use lethal force against American citizens, so they cannot be political tyranny. For us, it's tyrannical. No.
It's extremely important that they be, both perceived and be neutral. Perceived as and be neutral, yes. They're not just hiring people based on one political view or the other. Yes, it raises major concerns about because of their ability to use force and the role that they play in American society.
Last question: why is your client whistleblower not coming forward by name?
And multiple reasons. I think, for starters, there is the fact that they are not a public individual. This is not someone who sought out attention, and to the extent that this is the whistleblower disclosures that are involved here are us raising to the Inspector General and others the misuse of the security clearance process. So this was not somewhere where the whole process started with disclosures or something like that. But this is someone who's a very private individual and doesn't want to see all this strewn out to the world. Another reason that I think is significant is that in this instance they are still hopeful that they can, after Inspector General examination, have the possibility of getting regular inspector. Because the Inspector General realizes how tainted this whole process was. That the Inspector General can help to set things right. That's what happened in Marcus Allen's case. The Inspector General did a very lengthy investigation, and we believe that played a big role in the FBI saying, maybe we better reinstate this person. So if there's a possibility like that, I think it means more to this client have the possibility of their economic livelihood restored than to make some splashy headlines. But this is significant, and they recognize this is significant, and that's why they're okay with this being shared with people.
Sure appreciate you explaining that for us. Thank you very much.
Just one step.
The phrase speech is bigger than any one person or any one organization. Societies are defined. Hey, it's Tucker Carlson. One thing we know for certain is the United States is going to be one intense place this fall. So we thought, what better time to hit the road and see the country we're going to this fall? We are pleased, in fact, thrilled to announce Tucker Carlson Live, which is what it sounds like, nationwide every show. Different special guests, Kelly, Beck, Gabbard, Swampy, Grant, and other people will be live on stage responding to everything that is happening in real time. Fun as hell. Get tickets at tuckercarlson.com. They're sure to sell out. We encourage you to get one.
You see if that's local? It's going to be here?
That's 22nd.
We're in South Greenville. Do we go to Greenville for something else? Where do we go? Greenville, South Carolina? What do we go there for? I feel like we have, but that wasn't where we bought our van, right? I think that was Greenville, North Carolina. He was?
Now, the charges stem from accusations he illegally purchased and possessed a gun while consenting to crack cocaine. They'll send out reports from Wilmington, Delaware.
He was found guilty? By a jury? Or
Yep.
Hunter Biden left the courthouse in Wilmington, Delaware, holding hands with First Lady Jill
He
Biden
wasn't put
and his
right
wife
into jail.
after hearing the guilty verdict in his federal
he probably has to go for a
Tuesday.
sentencing hearing.
Special counsel David Weiss brought the charges against the president's son after a proposed
Boy, is he in trouble now.
last year.
This case was about
David Weiss is going to pay.
on the disclosure
for not making this go away.
And a combination of guns and drugs that made his conduct dangerous.
The jury of 6 men and 6 women found Hunter Biden guilty of 3 felony charges, including falsifying statements to purchase a firearm in 2018 and possessing a weapon while being a drug user or addict. Throughout the trial, the defense argued their client was not using at the time of the purchase and did not knowingly violate the law. This case marks the first time.
Oh, you don't know the law? Then I
It's
guess
funny that
then
they
I
would
guess you
argue
don't
that
have to
when
get
Everybody who's not a lawyer knows that ignorance of the law is no defense.
Right.
It's like the only thing non-lawyers know.
well, tell that to all the January 6 people who walked on the Capitol grounds thinking that it was okay. You want to trade him for all the January 6ers who are in jail?
Biden said he loves his son and will
How about that?
present the outcome of the case and judicial process as Hunter considers an appeal. Hunter Biden said in his own statement that he is disappointed by the outcome, but grateful for the love and support of family and friends.
The same judge who decided over the case will determine Hunter Biden's favor at sentencing, which is expected to take place about 103 days from today, just before the presidential election.
I don't think regular people get 4 months off before they get sentenced
Yeah.
on gun charges.
Well, they have to make it right so they can find out if Biden wins or not. If he does, then he can pardon him. If he doesn't win, he's got to pardon him quick before Trump takes over.
So we also had Joe Biden do that really weird squat last week where he had done it before. He's like done this weird thing where he goes up and crouches again. Every parent knows this is what a kid does when he's crouching his pants. Joe Biden once even said his butt's been wiped for the press. So Joe Biden's now starting a
That's been
trend,
wiped?
which is something you don't want to do. If the trend is about you crapping your pants on TV.
Is that what he did on TV?
Yeah. To the Biden.
Oh, God.
There's a thing I know about Trump supporters. They have this other popular
Hunter Biden carries the family name and a lot of baggage.
Well, what did Hunter Biden supposedly do wrong? What would you say?
So the Biden family and the administration give us access to those people for people in foreign countries to include Romania, Ukraine, and China in exchange for a significant amount of money.
This week we dissect the case with 2 IRS whistleblowers who went to Congress to change the course.
Didn't we already see
of what
this?
they call a cover-up.
This old?
Who told you guys you were off the case?
The special agent charged with Washington field office.
I think we already saw this
They
one.
didn't care what happened in this case. They just were trying to silence it.
It's the first time the son of a sitting president has been charged with felony crimes. What else did it reveal?
That's not new, right? Oh, they don't have like a date on it? No.
Most likely to vote. I will say 63. I had to reread this section like 3 times before I could believe it was true. So my understanding is that I can go to a provincial magistrate and I can say that I fear that someone I know may commit a hate crime, let's say this year. Not even that the threat is real, but that I'm afraid it might be real. And that magistrate can act on that by, well, the penalty laid out.
That is a sham.
Well, if you're the person who is eliciting fear, then you can have an ankle bracelet on for a year, and you can be essentially.
Oh my God, that's going to get abused.
And the court can determine who you can talk to and who you can't talk to, and And they can also require you to have your bodily foods monitored and to put restrictions on your right to consume alcohol. Anything that would, in principle, heighten the probability that you might commit hate speech. Most
Hate speech.
Wow.
Can you imagine? Is this somebody singing? What's happening?
It's gonna be awkward when he does that same thing with his sister. Every year, yeah.
What was he doing? Touching people?
He, like, if a guy was standing with his girlfriend, he'd take the guy's hand and put it like around their waist or something.
To make them more like affectionate,
Yeah.
intimate.
You got in trouble for refusing to call trans people by their personal pronouns. Why should your right to freedom of speech trump a trans person's right not to?
because in order to be a thing, you have to risk being offensive. I mean, look at the conversation we're having right now. You know, like you're certainly willing to risk offending me in the pursuit of truth. Why should you have the right to do that? It's being rather uncomfortable.
Fine, I'm very glad I could get it out like that. Sorry, I'm just trying to work that out.
You mean I'm offending you?
Gotcha.
You have got me. I'm kind of working out in my head.
Trying to work out in my head how you could be offended by what I'm saying
And how that's not a
when
bad
I'm
thing
clearly
when I do it.
when I'm clearly on the right side of this. So how could I be offending you?
Oh,
What's happening?
he's catching an alligator.
Oh. Is he naked?
No.
Did he jump on it?
And I found a steak meat last weekend.
That was very manly, being able to get an alligator.
Maybe he's an alligator wrestler.
So, like, you really need to cut that.
Alright, interview time. E&D Pizza Company, West Main Street, Avon, Connecticut, voted Best of Hartford magazine winner. Winner, Connecticut Now, Best of Hartford. This good pizza in Connecticut. And by the way, I saw like people who even went to like the state capitol, and there are like 200 declaring state like law, constitution, or federal amendment or something that New Haven was the pizza capital of the world. I didn't get a fucking
Of the world?
and listen, I love the people of Connecticut. We gotta give the mayor, king, whatever, Connecticut. That doesn't happen without me. That's not cool. So at least then by like, hey Dave, since you kind of put New Haven, I'm not saying everyone knew about New Haven, but I
didn't.
expose it to the world. Not even thank you, how you doing very much. I would break this polo I know I did. The blue, the eyes, under what beachy bungalow, lilacs, I don't know if there's a lilac, reminds me of blueberry, mark my accents, roll back.
Lilac reminds me of blueberry?
Pizza 20% off.
That makes no sense.
Great Alright, here we go. One bite, every nose rules. E&D Pizza Company. Very thin. Looks good.
That looks
Very
good.
thin.
It does look good.
Wow.
That reminds me of,
Say wow,
what's the one in the North End that we love?
because I wasn't expecting me that burn. No flaw.
What is it?
That's what know, like entering Connecticut, the whole window flop.
That's the one of the north
And
end?
a lot of things that
It's your Argentina?
Yeah, looks like that.
See what we got. I want to burn myself. I like the little bottle of trouble. Constantly too. Very good. How are we doing? The pizza all the way to the edge there? For cubes, I mean? Does somebody want to put this in the eggs? I wouldn't bite it. Does somebody want to say it's the bigger pizza in the Harvard area? I wouldn't bite it. Certainly worthy of the award. Premium on 7.9. Maybe on this, I get what they're doing. I want a little more crust, but it's thin, it's crispy, it's
When it's that thin though,
it's tasty.
crust really isn't great.
Like I said,
It's usually too crunchy.
Very good. Like I said, I'm not gonna bite you. If someone wants to put the eggs, I will not bite you. I'll shake your hand and say, let's have this course. Let's have a discussion. We need more of that discussion. And you'll support it. That'll be all over the internet. I know who's supporting this sport. That's that. It's good sport.
Did you just say 6'9"?
7.
Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is
Oh, shush.
Match point Betty, free at last, they got on free at last. Can't tell if it's free, now to escape for a final. Still have a fourth-order gag order from Daily Wire, which no longer works there, and is now publishing under her own YouTube channel and is able to chronicle the last couple of months after she was unceremoniously fired from Daily Wire for taking crisis game, among other fireable offenses. At that company, and so it's up with her first video. I got fired. That's great.
I thought they had a parting of ways.
Okay. So Candace Owens now publishing, and man, it's getting ugly. Gotta tell you.
Still?
It was Candace's first show, but this weekend, the world was kind of rocked. Candace Owens calling out a spy for the Daily Wire Center. And I confirmed this through my own sources at Turning Point USA. Candace Owens called up Bureau's shady tactics and Turning Point tells him that he Detroit had a debate. But check it out. Like, Candace Owens is saying effectively that there was a spy that was sent from the Daily Wire to like go report her, and this young woman is leaving the conference from Turning Point. So it's totally creepy, weird thing. But let's listen to Candace herself. You know that there are NDAs that are being enforced now. They finally lost 25 people due to this bad breakup, and that there are people who were allegedly fired for simply having sent nice notes to people.
Really?
Because the Daily Wire went in and used their ability to like search through somebody's personal email, to access a personal email, and struck it down. It's great. It's great. That's what's out there. And now this is out. Candace Owens talking about her firing from the Daily Wire.
That, of course, is not the only elephant in the room. I kid, there is a much bigger one, and we will address that too. You know, for me, my podcast,
What good is it going to be to diss them like this?
I don't even feel that the entire world is listening. I'm kind of just like, hey, oh my gosh, did you see this? This is crazy. I just read this crazy book. Oh my
She's
gosh,
following the Steven Crowder route.
It's like talking to my family on the phone. And then we kind of sort of find out that the entire world's listening. pieces are being written about me, and I'm like, oh, it's being spied on. Why is somebody listening to our private conversations? So yeah, when I found out really kind of sort of definitely with the rest of the world that my show had been rather unceremoniously canceled, it was upsetting. It sort of felt like you're talking on those old school cord phones late into the night and like your parents are sleeping and then you think you're sleeping. And then suddenly your mom picks up and she's like, yeah, this conversation is ending right now and you're grounded for 2 weeks. It's over. Deeply, deeply upsetting. And I think also something that was strange is that when most people leave their jobs, they just sort of leave their jobs. It doesn't really become this global news story where everybody goes to happy comments. Yeah, a worldwide Twitter trend for an entire week. Crazy. But I want to say this, I genuinely, my entire life, I believe that you should always aim to split amicably, whether that's a relationship, whether you're...
Wait, then why are you doing all this?
Which I hope never happens, or whether it's just leaving a job. Why else would we put years in anywhere if we do not want that relationship to end amicably? That should always be the aim. I want you to know that. Wherever you are going, don't put a year somewhere and then have it be a messy split. And quite frankly, I also think it's the right thing professionally not to speak about why you are splitting or what's happened.
And why are you doing it?
Under a gag order or enforced gag order, do not speak ill of the Daily Wire or a hero, but that gag order must not. You call this Andrew Clavin, maybe somebody who Candace Owens has. We're going to honk on hard and paint. He's one of the personalities on the Daily Wire, Andrew Clavin, in an attempt to explain why Christ is king. Can be anti-Semitic, offered this on a podcast about me. Candace Owens posted a couple of months ago in March when this thing first really took off. She's been going hard at Andrew Clavin, who apparently was a person who's been tapped at the Daily Wire to come out and disparage Candace. Here's what Candace had to say about Andrew Clavin. She talked about that.
But I was shocked, very shocked, and I'm sure you were shocked as well, when no sooner was the split announced than Andrew Clavin just was like, hey, it's me, I picked myself, I'm gonna be her crazy ex-boyfriend. It was like a bizarre tour he went on. He felt like it was his duty. I mean, somebody invited him and said, you know, this is your duty to go around and to just smear Candace Owens. Say whatever it is that you want about her. And there's a piece of this that everybody's missing, and I do want to talk about that. I think Lauren Chen really summed it up, or at least pointed to it on Twitter. She sort of said, you know, what's really missing in all these conversations with Andrew Clavin is, are you guys recognizing that he's basically saying she was really nice to him? That there was nothing that she did from a personality perspective. Yeah, that is kind of a big part that I think a lot of people are missing. Lauren Chen?
Okay.
About Dan.
Maple Street Biscuit.
Oh. You like biscuits.